Hello, welcome to the Curator Podcast, and this is episode 7. Hi, hello, welcome once again, dear listener, to the Curator Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Fraser, and this is episode 7. How are you doing? That's what I want to know, how you're doing. I'm doing pretty well. This week, I was extremely fortunate to be able to sit down with a songwriter who I think is one of the most underrated songwriters of my generation, and is also perhaps one of the most influential songwriters as well. His name is Jonah Matranga, and if you don't know him, he used to play in a band called Far. Far were, and I guess still are, a very influential band. Their influence stretched from the likes of the Deftones and all the kind of alt-metal bands of that era, right up to that whole emo post-hardcore explosion in the early and mid-2000s, which is kind of the music that I grew up listening to when I was in my teens. He's one of the most humble, inspiring and most staggeringly prolific people I've ever seen, and it was such an honour to chat with him. My journey with Jonah dates back to 2005. At that time, I was a huge Funeral for a Friend fan, and at the time I was also seeing a girl who both loved Funeral for a Friend and his band Far. At some point during the touring cycle for their first album, Funeral for a Friend's Casually Dressed and Deep in Conversation, they did a cover of The System live on Radio 1, which is a Far song. It was a combination of that and the aforementioned girl's love for Far which turned me on to Jonah. So in 2005, when he toured with Funeral for a Friend and a band that he was in called Gratitude, is when I actually first got to meet him. Later in that year, I managed to see him level on a venue called the Barfly in Glasgow, which no longer exists. At some point through the wonders of MySpace, Jonah put out a bulletin, because remember that's what they used to be called, they used to be bulletins. He put out like this post which basically said that he would do some unique one-off recordings for people. All I had to do was email him with some songs and he'd work on it and send it back to them. And so I did that. He did a cover of a Jimmy Eat World song called Work, and also a Placebo song, the name of which I can't remember. And it was one of the coolest things I'd ever heard, and probably one of the most unique experiences I've ever had. I've never had music which has been made just for me, so that was pretty cool. In the years since, I've followed his progress quite closely, but I've somehow never managed to make it down to one of his Glasgow shows. That was until recently. On Facebook, I saw one of my cousins saying that he was going to attend a Jonah Matranga show in Aberdeen, so naturally I had a look online to see if he was playing in Glasgow, and he wasn't, but he was playing near. He was playing near Glasgow in a place called Dunlop, which is a small village in between Glasgow and Kilmarnock. It was in a bowling club, and it turned out that he was doing 2 shows that day. He was doing a 4pm matinee style show and then another one at 8 o'clock. So I dropped him an email, arranged an interview, and then I headed down. And that's when things got pretty weird. The village itself was pretty sleepy. It's a kind of one shop, one pub place that's so achingly parochial it could have come straight out of a James Robertson novel. By 4:30pm, the bowling club was full of people of all ages, from the age of 8 to the age of 82. Everyone there seemed to love Jonah. Everyone there was somehow touched by this guy's transcendent musical energy. He arrived as just one man on a guitar. There was no tour manager, no crew, no fuss at all. Quietly, and then loudly, went about his business. The place loved it. The crowd was so quiet, they were so polite, that you could hear cars passing off in the distance and the silence in between the songs. And after the show was over, they put on a buffet in the kitchen upstairs in the bowling club. It was probably one of the most punk rock things I've ever experienced, and it's an experience unlike anything I've ever had in my life. Somewhere, somehow, some American guy who was beloved by a fan with enough balls to ask him to travel out to the sticks somewhere outside Glasgow asked him to become and be part of his life, and he subsequently decided to do it, and then somehow ended up becoming part of that village's life. This American, this post-hardcore legend, this songwriter whose influence will be writ large for many years to come, from literally the other side of the world, from one of the biggest cities on earth, has found a home in being let into the hearts of the residents of a tiny village in the middle of Scotland. And he did it without pomp and circumstance. with a humble heart and a loving embrace. When he took to the stage to perform, that one man and one guitar, he filled that room, as Jonah is wont to do. And even though he's an artist, and an artist's mission is to somehow leave a piece of himself with you, somehow they left a piece of himself with him. I left before the evening show began, but it was only then that people from outside Dunlop had started to arrive to see Jonah. I wonder what their experience was like. In the podcast that follows, Jonah explains how Dunlop became a thing. I enjoyed sitting with him in a gazebo next to this really well manicured bowling green in literally the middle of nowhere. I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed doing it. I'm going to open the interview with a track called I Really Love Your Company, because there's probably no song which quite encapsulates that experience quite like this.
There are days when I just wanna run away. My heart feels cold and dark, you know, the skies are grey. And I know that things will change, but I can't see. And those are the days I really love your company. I really love your company. And there are days when I wake up and I just smile, and it feels like my good mood might last a while. And everything feels right and sweet and free. Those are the days I really love your company. I really love your company. Company, yeah. I really love your company. There's not a day that goes by when I don't want you by my side. Yeah, I just know it's simply I really love your company. Yeah, I really love your company. Company, yeah. I really love your company. Yeah, I really love your company.
Jonah, it's a pleasure. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Life is good.
You seem to be always on tour. What is with that?
I think the main thing, aside from the fact that I just adore music and this is what I've done, and is actually that I've been a father this whole time too, and so I never wanted to go away for too long. But in order to play all the places I want to play and go the places I want to go, there has to be, I have to do it sometime. So I tend to go away in these 2-week bursts. So I actually tour as much as most touring artists, but I do it. Usually most artists go away for 3, 4, 5 months at a time. I've never done that. So that's why the impression is that I'm always touring, yeah, because I am.
Just keeping busy all the time.
Yeah, well, it's, and it's 2 things. It's music, which I love, and raising my daughter, which I love. So it's busy with really fun things.
So with you doing these 2-week bursts, it must be quite difficult being away from your daughter then.
It is. That's why I don't go away for very long. It sounds strange to say, but I'm sort of fortunate enough to have married young and divorced young, because then we really just have been focused on raising our daughter. So a lot of times I would just go away according to my custody schedule. So she'd be with her mom, I'd go and do some shows, I'd come back, So it's it's a lot, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
What's like now that you've been doing this for a while, I guess, has life changed on the road for you over the years, like the way that you operate?
Yeah, it certainly has. I mean, especially when I went solo, it's much easier to deal with life on the road alone. It can be sort of lonely, but there's always people around, and I meet people, and I have friends all over the world and all that stuff. And there's not both the logistical and the emotional weight of a band. And it's not that other people are bad people or that I'm a bad person. It's just, it's a lot of time spent with people on tour. But even when I was on tour, I'm thinking about your question, have things changed? I'm not sure how much they've changed. I've always enjoyed the kind of, the homey aspects of tour. I've enjoyed getting to stay in people's homes. I've enjoyed getting made home-cooked meals. And so that's the kind of stuff that hasn't really changed. I never really went through a period where I enjoyed different things. I love the idea of being welcomed into a neighborhood or a house because I sing. It's a really amazing thing to think about.
Speaking of homely, we're sitting in Dunlop where you've just played one of 2 shows in a bowling club.
Yeah.
Can you explain this to me?
I can't. All I can say is that I never could have dreamed it would have turned out this way, and I'm so happy it has. I've been coming to Dunlop for about 4 years now, and I kind of forget how it started, but I'm just always one that's up for an adventure. So when I hear of a place that I haven't heard of, and someone says, "Hey, let's put on a show," I'll almost always go at least once, as long as they seem nice and they got their shit together. Like I'll try it. And then Dunlop, I was playing in this place, the Old Hoose Pub, and and the house is literally spelled Hoose. So I love trying to pronounce it that way, Hoose. So I was playing there for a few years, and so we're trying it for the first year at this bowling club, and I really love it. And for anyone who's listening who's American, this is not the kind of bowling with the varnished lanes and the big, heavy 10-pin bowler. It's on grass, and it's kind of one of those games where you try and get things as close as possible to a little object. That's my story on bowling, Scottish style. But anyway, here we are at the bowling club.
I think I was saying to my friend earlier on that this might be one of the most punk rock things I've ever experienced in my life.
Yeah, see, this is punk rock. Punk rock, it's fine. The jeans and the earrings and the mohawks and the rah-rah. And I love that. I grew up on it and I adore it. And for me, this is the heart of punk rock, is going into a community center that is not usually used for rock and roll. And that's to me what punk is about. It's what folk is about. It's what hip hop is about. It's what a lot of musics that have really come truly from sort of the underclass and people without a lot of money and a lot of resources. You just make do. And so what I love about this is, hey, we don't need to go to some proper venue. We can just go to the bowling club. They'll let us use our room, and they're making food in the kitchen, and we brought our own PA. And yeah, this is the heart of punk rock, is just making things work.
It kind of ties both things together. We just discussed, you've got this show in a random place, and you've got being on the road all the time, and there's nothing more punk rock than one guy and his guitar playing, like you say, just some random place. Yeah,
I mean, it really, and it does go back to a pretty simple and similar theme, which is that it's about home. It's about creating a space where people feel safe and happy and safe and happy to feel other feelings, to be angry or to be whatever it is. And whether the music's loud or soft or silly or serious, just to do it in a way that is accessible to everyone, that's not financially or in any other way out of reach for people. And then just see who shows up. And the cool thing about Dunlop especially is there's literally 2-year-olds here, and I think up to 80-year-olds here. There's several generations of a few different families here. And I love that. I just really love that.
It's heartening to see a whole community, just as I was sitting there thinking, they've taken this American guy that they didn't know, to their heart. That's insane.
It really is. I mean, it really is strange. no one I know has played the Dunlop Bowling Club. No one I know is playing Dunlop, and I know a lot of musicians, and it's cool. Yeah, they've been so kind to me, and I've stayed in different houses, and just had all sorts of people walk up to me and say, and when I play in the pub, I mean, the pub's been there for 100 years or something, and I've had people come and say to me that they've never seen it so alive. And when someone who's 75 says that about a place that's been standing 100 years and they've been going their whole life, that's something. That's pretty amazing to me, and I'm sure they've had a lot of fun nights in there. And so the fact that this person who doesn't even know me, doesn't know punk rock, doesn't know anything like that, just gets the emotion of it, just the feeling of it. That's the stuff.
It's almost like being at home, I guess, like with the whole sense of love.
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, it's really, I've always had kind of a small family, and I think somewhere in there, I just started to choose to make as many people my family as possible, to really kind of have it be a situation where, I would have a familiarity with people, even if we really never spoke that much, just to have it be the feeling of sitting in the living room with the family and singing.
Yeah, that was basically a living room you just played in, and you're going to play in again.
Yeah, and it's kind of my favorite. There's no way to be, some dumb, pretentious rock star when you're in a bowling club. There's just no way. There's no way it's going to happen. And I really enjoy spaces like that.
So apart from the touring a lot, you've done a lot. You've done quite a few projects over forever, I guess. And you've worked with some people, I guess, maybe your contemporaries, but in my eyes, they're just as legendary as you, like Jay Robbins, Ian from Rival Schools. How does that come about?
Hey. How does it come about? Oh, by the way, we're sitting overlooking this lawn in this little gazebo-y type thing because it keeps raining on and off, and so people are walking by, and so, yeah, there you go. Jay, I mean, he's a hero to me, too. Jawbox, actually, way forever ago, when Farr was considering signing to a major label, I wrote to Jawbox on AOL.com, actually. They had an AOL email address. And so I wrote to that address because they were one of the first kind of indie bands who had signed with a major label. And it wasn't because they needed a bunch of money or anything like that. It was really actually that they, like Farr, were just kind of misfits, basically. And so they landed at Atlantic. And so I wrote to them saying, how's your experience been? And they were so generous. They'd never met me. And they were so nice and wrote back and really kind of gave their thoughts on what was working for them and what wasn't. And so I've loved their music for a long time and them as people for that kindness for a long time. And then Jay, so I did a cover of Savory, this song of theirs. And one particular version of it is me in a Casio machine. And I played that for Jay. I got to perform that for him, actually, when he was out at a conference for a recording magazine called Tape Op. He was in Sacramento, where I was living at the time. And so I played it for him while he was there. I was very embarrassed, but it was fun. I like being embarrassed. It's fun. And so I played it for him, and he really liked it. And we just kind of kept in touch over the years. And it's the kind of thing with rock and roll. I've discovered that the longer I kick around, the more fun it is to see other people that are kicking around that long too. It's just a cool feeling, and so I think we've got a kind of a simpatico thing going right there. And so we just kept in touch, and then this guy sent me some music 2 years ago now, gosh. And I wasn't that into the music. It was fine. It was just rock and roll, and rock and roll is wonderful, and I've sung a lot of it. I've listened to a lot of it. So I couldn't really hear it. And then this guy mentioned that Jay Robbins was involved. And just knowing that Jay had given his time and his energy to it, it really made me listen to the music a little harder, honestly. And it's just that kind of thing. And also, I just really wanted to be on a recording with Jay Robbins. So I was like, all right, I'll do this. Right? I mean, who wouldn't want to do that? So I sang some vocals in my bedroom, sent them over. Jay really liked them. Everyone really liked them. And so that turned into a 7-inch called Moral Mazes. Or the project, I guess, is called Moral Mazes. The 7-inch was called Magic Tommy Johnson, which is a whole other Sorry, was it Johnson or Jackson? Jackson, Magic Tone Jackson, which is, I'm not going to try to explain it, but once you see the picture, you'll understand. Anyway, to make a long story longer, we then went on tour last year, did a little acoustic tour, and it was super... It was as cool as I was ever hoping it would be to hang out with him and play music with him. And we talked a bit about recording sometime. And there's this guy, Zach Barocas, who has been one of Jay's drummers for a long time now, and they're dear, dear friends. Zach's been around since Jawbox, and yeah, he's a great, great player, great person, I've now found out. So we talked about it loosely last year in New York, and then this past... Gosh, what was it? Just a couple months ago now, we made some songs. I went to Baltimore for a weekend and we recorded some songs, and I really love them. And they're I don't know when they're going to come out or what we're calling them or anything like that. But it's exciting. It's really exciting to look over and see Jay Robbins like rocking out to a vocal I just did. Like that's pretty cool. I'm not afraid to admit it.
Like you've been involved in a lot of different projects, including I As Another with Ian from Rival Schools, and obviously the Gratitude stuff and all that. Like it seems to be that, in my opinion, you're one of the guys that a lot of bands that now, and even as far back as Funeral for a Friend, it's always been like they've been inspired by you and Far. So it kind of makes sense that you'd be working with people that have kind of inspired you now in your life. You know what I mean? Like at this point.
Yeah, it's cool. I've never really thought about it like that, but there was a thing a long time ago where some artists I met that I really loved, Pearl Jam or U2 or different folks I've run into, just going to shows, just going to rock shows and following the band around like anyone else does. They treated me so nicely, and it really affected me. I thought, this is the way that I want this to be for anyone that ever cares about my music. I want them to have this interesting and human an experience. And also, frankly, I've met people over the years who have reminded me how I don't want to do it, who really, I think, are just sort of lost in rock and roll and egos and whatever that is. And so I've had people giving me lessons on what to do and what not to do. And it is wonderful to play with people who grew up loving my music or just to talk, and because I know quite literally exactly how it feels to be so in love with a musician or a song or anything, and then get to meet them. And I just really adore the feeling that I've gotten, so I'm happy to kind of pass that along, and hopefully the folks that are inspired by me in whatever way then turn around, of course, and inspire someone else.
Well, having been doing what you've been doing for a while, and you mentioned you've met some artists that you don't particularly like, they've treated you kind of not nicely and they've got lost. Is that an easy thing for somebody that's on the road a lot or making a lot of music over a long period of time to get lost?
I think it has something to do with scale. Scale is a thing I think about a lot. I don't think it's the time touring. I think it's the way in which one tours, and I don't think it's rock and roll. It's not making music. It's not anything like that. It's about when the business gets to be
like business.
Like business. I guess it's well said. Yeah, it's just I love making money doing this. I'm so impossibly grateful that I've carved out a little life where I get to pay my rent and take care of my kid, and I've never had a lot of money. I've never owned a new car. I've never had a dishwasher in my house. I've never had a laundry machine in my house. I've never had fancy things, and I've gotten to live from singing. And a lot of the reason I think I'm still so happy doing it is because, frankly, I never got that famous. And while the money would be nice and a lot of things about it would be nice, I've seen enough people that I really love and people that I don't really know get really screwed up, and it's sort of counterintuitive that someone would be earning millions of dollars and be revered by literally millions of people and would still be tremendously unhappy. And I think a lot of artists, they start unhappy. That's why I think we make art, is to heal ourselves in the best way we know. And so that is true too. It's not that rock and roll or fame makes people unhappy. However, it certainly doesn't seem to solve problems, and it seems to exacerbate some emotional problems. And even where there were no emotional problems, I think being treated like an object and treating other people like objects for a long enough time, it hardens people. And it's kind of overwhelming. And I think in some part of myself, I know when I get close to that, I just know that that doesn't feel right. And I've just never pushed past that point. I've listened to that and gone, okay, I'm going to stop now because this doesn't feel good. And for me, I've had enough people die, and I'm aware enough of mortality that I have no interest in sort of trying to reach some strange goal in my life and somehow missing my life aspiring to that goal. So I think all of those things are what tears people up. It's really, sort of reaching for false gods kind of thing. And I don't mean that in any particularly religious way. I just mean kind of worshiping states of being that are just kind of illusory. I mean, I don't know why we believe in things like afterlives, because I think it causes a lot of problems. As far as I can tell, we're here and then we're not. And while we're here, great, do whatever we can, but it doesn't matter after we're gone. And it doesn't even matter to us what if we're famous after we're dead. This doesn't matter. Those of us that are alive still make something about the fact that of dead people, of people that are gone. And that's fine, but that person isn't around. And so, of course, I would love for people to talk nicely about me when I'm gone. And outside of that, I don't think there's any reason to aspire to these sort of crazy ambitions in this life, because I think to lose this life aspiring to things was one of the crueler ironies.
Disappears, and I'm the one that never fades off. I am clear and solid truth. I am just one big betrayed. Tomorrow, I love you. Tomorrow, I dream of days that go slow. I dream of that makes some sense. Something stolen or something left. A preacher or a president that never lies and never sins and tells us what a mess we're in. Tomorrow, I love you. Tomorrow, I dream of days that go slow. I dream of sun. Had a dream or seven, I'm not sure which one came I'm not sure. I dream of days that go slow. I dream of someone that won't
kind of, I guess a lot of the time that's what leads to that whole kind of being broken by, you know, eventually treating people badly because you've not had those kind of dreams or those ideas that you had, those preconceived notions that you had before you started getting big in a band to then to not have it, like, I guess, fulfilled, you know.
Well, that's something that can happen too. Absolutely. I mean, where, yeah, if I'm, well, there's a phrase I really love that I find myself saying a lot these days, and it's just simply, hurt people. And so my thing is, what can I do to heal myself so that I don't then pass on that hurt to other people in whatever way? And yeah, if I'm always setting myself up to never be enough, and that I'm never famous enough, I'm never rich enough, I'm never hot enough, if I'm doing all that and hurting myself that way, then that sucks in and of itself. And then, yeah, if I'm bitter to other people that would otherwise be helping me and I would be having a fun time with because I'm lost in my sort of imagination of what I'm supposed to be or what they're supposed to be or whatever that is, it really causes, it can't be overstated how much pain that causes in a very real way. If our world weren't such a horrific, fucked up, violent place, this might just all be kind of blah, blah, blah. But the fact is, passed on trauma and hurting people. I mean, this is wars. This is suicides. This is murders. This is any problem. This is drug addiction. This is any problem you can think of is essentially based in someone or something not being enough for someone, whether it's a dream or another person or a level of wealth or whatever it is. And then as soon as one person is scarred, that person is ever more likely to pass that on to someone else. And it's one of the more sad legacies that we've got. And so I just aspire to, whatever I've been through, painful or not, I guess I try and leave the hurt behind and deal with it myself so that no one else will have to deal with it.
So to go on to another topic, I guess, because we're about creativity here at the Curator Podcast, I've read a lot of interviews with you recently and doing my research, and no one's ever really asked you this question, so I think it's quite a self-evident question that we should be asking you. Is like, who are some of the songwriters you look up to that started that creative spark in your life?
Yeah, I mean, there were the people that were just around when I happened to be little and starting to listen to music. So cliche though it may be, I mean, the Beatles, they have two particular collections that really are just part of my DNA. One is the 62 to 66, it's known as the Red album, and then 67 to 70, the Blue album. And they're these two gatefold vinyl albums that were in my house when I was little. And Paperback Writer, if there's one song that started my head sparking to make music, it's that song. I mean, it's actually about that sort of thing too, which, is corny as that sounds, when I was like 9, that was exciting as hell. And also the crack of that snare drum and that song, the start of that song, there's some moments that happen in rock and roll that are just, that have opened up so much possibility for me. So yeah, Simon and Garfunkel were a big deal too. They're around. Joe Cocker, there's a self-titled record of his. There was almost a picture on the cover more than anything else, but it was that and his cover of With a Little Help from My Friends, back to the Beatles. But he does this bluesy, rocked out cover of that song, and that was also exciting to me to hear this one really goofy, would you believe it? Which is wonderful. I love that tune so much, and I've like sung it with my daughter, and I adore it. But then to hear Joe Cocker do it in this entirely different way, that also really opened my head up to possibilities in music, and I still love covers and doing them, and I think a lot of that is from that. Jackson Browne, this kind of American singer-songwriter guy, a record called Late for the Sky.
That's such a good song.
Oh man, it just I still remember that feeling of that record that when you come to the place where the road and the sky divide, like that. Oh my gosh, I mean that line just affected me so much as a little kid. I don't even know why or how, but it was sort of the right place, right time. So, and then, gosh, I mean, there's just endless. I mean, I just grew up raised on radio, so when I was, a little kid, like Pat Benatar on the radio, I loved listening to her. And there's this like American teen idol called Sean Cassidy that was a really big deal to me when I was little. And then as I kind of grew up a little bit and got into stuff, The Who, Meaty Beaty Big and Bouncy, that record, whew, man, Anyway, Anyhow, Anywhere, that is a song, also with a great snare crack at the beginning of it. And just those lines, I can do anything, like just, again, these lines that sound corny when we grow up, or maybe not, maybe they still sound awesome because they still sound awesome to me, but as a little kid, and that was fairy tales for me, that was superheroes, that was sharks, that was dinosaurs, those songs were that. They were this big, big deal to me. And then as I grew up, I mean, I think it went, I was in Boston, so there were some bands that were huge at the time. I mean, Aerosmith and the band Boston and the Cars. So these bands that were massive in the city that I was living in. And then there were bands that, lesser-known bands, Mission of Burma, even lesser-known bands that probably no one's heard of, like O Positive was probably my biggest influence in high school because they were a local band, but they seemed like gods to me, and they wrote these cool tunes and made these records, but they never got anywhere, really. But at the time, it was a great, huge deal for me. And then, in high school, discovering the Pretenders, discovering Chrissie Hynde, and just this kind of butch, gender indeterminate, tough woman just singing her heart out, and this amazing band, and this woman fronting this band of men, and that was just a huge, wonderful possibility. Suzanne Vega's first record was a real eye-opener for me in terms of songwriting in particular, because it was just her and a guitar, basically. There were other production elements, but it was a really big deal to me at the time because I was loving rock and roll, but rock and roll records, I couldn't really get my head around how I was ever going to make one. They're so loud and big. And Suzanne Vega's record, for whatever reason, I just thought, wait, I could do this. Not that I could write songs that good, but I could make this noise in my house with no one there. And so I used to, use tape decks. I would put them together so I could use them as a multi-track by like recording into one of them while the other one was playing and all this crazy stuff. And so then I got my first 4-track recorder, and then I was kind of off to the races. And then I was interested in some more acoustic music because it felt more available to me as a person. I couldn't sing like Robert Plant, but I could sing softly into my microphone late at night, and it would sound okay in the recorder. And that was huge for me. Post-punk was a big deal. I mean, The Clash, can't overstate it. U2, can't overstate it. R.E.M., Joe Jackson, Pretenders, and Suzanne Vega, I already mentioned. Tracy Chapman's first record was a massive deal to me. And then all the while, I mean, I was in a hip-hop, I was in a dance crew when I was in high school called The Final Touch. We would do breakdancing, and so I was listening to Red DMC and Nucleus and Grandmaster Flash and all the early amazing hip-hop artists. So I was into that. I was that kid. I had the Zeppelin pins on and then was listening to hip-hop. And then as I came to high school, I mean, bands like Fishbone really opened up a lot for me. They were really crossing genres, and they were black, playing rock and roll, but then doing it really differently than anyone else, and seeing them early on was a big deal for me. And a thread I discovered as I kind of started to think about why I liked what I liked. And it's funny, I haven't even mentioned Led Zeppelin, and I really wish to say that there's kind of every other band for me, and then there's Led Zeppelin. They're who I lost my virginity to. They're who they just spoke to me so much in a way that I don't think I'll ever understand. But I think in hindsight, one thing I really loved is that they could be so heavy and aggressive and decadent and then also so sweet and flowery and hippie-ish and acoustic stuff and electric stuff. And it really, what I've really come to love are artists. And so I think my deepest lifelong influences are people like Zeppelin, Prince, Neil Young, David Bowie, Miles Davis, in any genre, no matter what, anyone who's willing to take risks, both emotionally and sonically, those are the people that really keep me going. So at this point, 20 years into a career, the artists that mean the most to me are the artists that seem to keep pushing and remain human, and I never know what to expect, but I always know they're going to be trying something new. That really just, yeah.
When you mention something like Bowie or Prince or Zeppelin, those are artists that are like hugely creative, and not just in the sense that they make really creative music, but they're prolific as well, much like yourself. What drives like being prolific in your eyes? Like, where does that come from?
Well, I don't know, and I think that's what drives me. I think there's just something really exciting about the fact, the heart question mark thing that I've got tattooed on me and that is all over the place in my stuff that's really come to mean to me, a lot. Like, I love ideas, I love mystery, and there's no, to me, greater mystery than where an idea comes from. Sure, somebody will hear a song and, I'll blah, blah. But really, when I get woken up at 3 a.m. one night, I think, people say grace before meals or sort of, the way a lot of people think of God or something. I think of creativity in that way. I mean, it wasn't too long before I had to think, I'm creating all these things, so what is this thing about a creator? And so I think I just, and Neil Young talks about this, I just really try and honor my ideas because I think of them as little gifts. Not gifts for anyone else, not gifts that need to be important to anyone else. This is not about that my songs are great at all. It's about that they are exciting to me in that moment. And if they are, how do I say thank you for that? And I guess I say thank you by trying to kind of usher them out into the world, kind of give them a little life. So it's creativity for me. And again, we're only here for so long, truly. And so I don't know what's happening with that, but why not? Why not play around? Why not record that idea? I feel like people talk about being bored in this life, and I don't think it's really, I don't think it's really possible to be bored. You could choose to feel that way, but there's always something. There's always something. Even if it's lying down and taking a nap, that's a creative act. So, I don't know, I get excited even talking about it. It's just really fun for me, and of course, to have the validation of any other human being and people like what I do and like it enough to give me any money for it and help me live my life, that's a whole other round of thank yous. But I think if I'm not excited about it myself, then I'm not even giving anyone anything that's worthwhile. So again, I'd rather hear an artist do something that they truly love, even if I don't like it as much. I'd rather know that they truly love it than an artist that somehow knows what I like and can kind of like deliver that to me. That's not my artist. So yeah.
Well, that kind of the next question I was going to ask you is about the Ideas project, which you're doing. Could you explain that a little bit to the listeners, and then we can maybe talk about that?
So the Ideas project, I forget what the acronym is. It's Interdependent, Definitely Excellent Activities Society, I think. Just an excuse to word ideas. And it's just a little thing where rather than buying a record at a time or a T-shirt at a time or whatever, people can chip in at whatever the level they want every month, and they'll get a little song. I do online shows for the community. I make people recordings for themselves. Just sort of anything you can do to be an ongoing personal relationship. This is what is the most interesting thing to me about making music with and for people, is this is this being a part of each other's lives. So Ideas is really putting that at the forefront. It's I want to turn up on everyone's credit card statement every month. Like, I really want them to see that and to go, how's Jonah doing? You know, because I think about them too. And then they write to me and they say, hey, what's up? And they say, you know, they ask me a question, and not that anyone can ask me a question anytime. I try to remain open. But I have to say, there's something about this little community that's pretty wonderful. Like, we've all got each other's back. It's just good.
Well, I think that's probably a good idea a good time to wrap up then.
Okay,
I think,
yeah. I'm going to eat my burger. And yeah, I mean, for any of this stuff, I mean, yeah, we could talk for hours and days about all this. This is music, this is life. But yeah, do come and visit on the internets or to a show. And thanks to you for making this.
Thank you for
Speaking of ideas, you're making your own ideas. See, this is the way. Well, no, I mean, that's the whole thing. It's the whole Yoda thing. There is no try, only do. Or he says it in some Yoda way. Anyway, this is what ideas are, and making them real. So, way to be.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you for talking to me. I appreciate it, man.
Thanks.
So there you have it, folks. Jonah Matranga. I was really nervous when I was doing that interview. Maybe you can tell. It was not just the fact that I was talking to a guy who I've got quite a lot of respect for, but also because I was in a very unfamiliar place. One of the things I've noticed about doing this podcast is that it's pushing me out of my comfort zone, and it's making me do things that I never thought I could ever do. Before that, I would never have thought to travel outside of Glasgow to a show by myself. Even though it's just 20 minutes on the train from where I live, it was still kind of a big deal for me, especially because I do tend to suffer from quite crippling anxiety, and I have done for many years. So all I need to say is thanks to you for listening to that. Thanks to Jonah for being very gracious, and I guess thanks to Jamie and all the people in Dunlop who had me, some kind of weird Glaswegian interloper, appearing out of nowhere to a show in the middle of nowhere, and just sat down and was blown away by the experience. So yeah, thanks for listening. Check us out on Facebook, that's the Curator Podcast. Check us out on Twitter, the Curator Pod. The website is thecuratorpodcast.com. You can send me an email over there, you can join the newsletter, all of that. If you get a second, please rate and review me on iTunes. It means a lot to me. It's really important to Apple as well, and especially for new podcasts, to get some notice. So please do that. And that's pretty much all I have to say. I'm going to play you out with a track called It's the Skin. Thanks for listening. Until next time.
Did drugs and ran around. We were kids, we owned that town. We'd steal for fun, and we'd get caught. We would run, get shot. Looking back, a shake with tears. Same dumb crimes, same dumb fears. Not the time. It's not the same. It's not an accident. It's the skin.